Close this door so my dog don't bust in. Can you hear me all right?
Mhm.
All right, fantastic. All right, Darius, thank you so much for joining me on my show. I've been a follower of your work for years. It's really great to speak to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. There's a lot I want to talk about in terms of the brand that you've built, in terms of you creating content through the written form, which I'm always an admirer of good writers. I wanted to start this conversation and open up with just a concept that you talked about that I found fascinating, and that's actually the catalyst on how you and I started talking through email. This article that you wrote about mental toughness and the idea of indifference, and that mental toughness is the ability to be indifferent about things that are worth being indifferent about. I can't remember if that's the exact quote you used.
Yeah, in different things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I loved it for real. Like I read it to my wife. I thought it was so
Mhm.
insightful. Just tell me about how you apply some of that thinking to your life and what it means to you.
Yeah, so that idea comes from Stoicism, and it's one of the primary principles of the philosophy. And the basic idea is that Marcus Aurelius, when he was practicing the philosophy, he always wrote to himself in his journal, right? So that's what the Meditations is, and it's right now it's obviously one of the most famous self-help books. It's been very popular in recent years. But if you read it closely, you'll find all kinds of exercises inside of the book. And one of those exercises is this one, right? So the whole idea is that you want to practice indifference to indifferent things. And by practicing that every single day, you can become more mentally tough. And the thing about mental toughness is a lot of people have different ways to describe it. The way that I look at mental toughness is as because it comes from professional sports. And to me, it's the ability to perform under stress.
Hmm.
And the reason that I wrote the article is that right now, a lot of us have also more stress in our lives compared to even a year ago. 2020, there are a lot of things going on. And right now, I think we can all use a little bit more mental toughness. So that's why I shared the exercise. And so the link between mental toughness and this exercise is in the practicing of staying calm. And that's the main idea behind this. And that's why I shared this is because if you start practicing every single day and certain things happen in your life, let's say your favorite cup falls and breaks, and you're like, oh yeah, I just wanted to have coffee in my favorite cup. And this is the cup, if I drink in it, like I do my best work. And it falls and breaks, and you're like totally off the whole day.
Sure.
That's a waste of your precious time. So you just want to practice on a very small thing. The cup breaks, and you think to yourself, is this worth getting frustrated about? The answer is obviously no, because if you're driven by your values and goals, and you know what's important to you in life, you can easily draw the line and say this is something that I can be indifferent to, and that's how I build things up. Right? And then after a while, you can get really uh, you can become very indifferent to also bigger things that take away your focus. So one of the examples that I gave in my in the article was that sometimes you get hate mail, and I know that a lot of other bloggers and writers and content creators write about how it can affect their day and their mindset. Uh, so this is a very big thing, right? If I get hate mail, I need to be indifferent to it. So that's why I think this is such an important concept, and uh, you can apply this to everything. At work, maybe somebody says to you, somebody says something you don't like. Uh, you can get pissed off about it, right? Or you can get frustrated about it. That can really change your mood for hours.
Mm.
So, it's one of those things to me. It's really high on my list, and a thing that I'm often working on.
Yeah, I'm gonna run with this for a little bit because this concept is it's a little bit bigger than just the specific examples that you gave, and it ties into a lot of the other underlying principles that you write about. Like I've always related to you, and we're gonna get this, especially with Think Straight and some of the other stuff that you've created. But just the idea of focus, the idea
Mm,
of the distractions that come into our lives, and how to start coping with them. So like I almost have to kind of open this idea up as a general discussion because it's so deep in our culture. When we were like, our brains aren't evolved to live in this kind of world, right? Like, and so
mhm.
that's why
Yeah.
when you get all these little stressors, like that little red dot on your phone, or
Mhm,
that email, or out of the 15, let's just go extreme, out of the 1,500 positive comments you got out of something that you created, and it's the
mhm.
one that's a negative comment that sticks in your mind and takes you off of your focus, uh,
Yeah.
like I'm looking just for additional perspective on the idea of our minds and our stress levels being so ramped up because of all the stimulus
Mhm,
that we're getting in today's culture. And I know that you practice stoicism. I'm not like an active follower of that, but
mhm.
the times I read about it, I know that the idea is very much in line with what we're talking about. So the question is, for people reading to this that feel constantly overwhelmed and bombarded by all of these stressors in our lives that like are not natural to being a person, how do you like how do you cope? What are some daily tips and some daily practices?
Yeah. So, in my work, and you probably know this, but for people who are listening, who are not familiar with my work, I always focus on the few essential things,
Mm,
the big ideas that can make a very big difference in your life. And this early this year, I wrote an article about one habit that can change your life. And in the article, I mentioned that uh, previously that I've been doing this as well. Like I shared, all right, here are a few tips, or here are a few habits that you can apply to your life to get that what you mentioned, like lower your stress, or whatever, like improve your focus. And those things are great. But what I've learned through reading and observing my comments and emails that I received from readers over the last 5 years, I've learned that the most important thing to have is awareness.
mm.
And if you don't have any awareness, then like the the hear the dogs.
Hmm.
uh, yeah, let me just close the.
Oh, I couldn't hear it. If that's what you're saying, I
Oh,
couldn't hear it at all.
okay,
No,
yeah,
I thought you were
the,
laughing at my dog because before we started
no,
recording, I was like, "Is my dog barking?" No,
no,
I couldn't hear it.
it's pretty. The dogs, some dogs will go crazy outside of here.
Nah.
Um, yeah, but so I talked about having one habit in your life. Oh, actually, do you want me to back up the
Yeah, I mean,
so you can
I
edit?
do. I like to
Yeah,
provide specific insights to people listening. I like to
yeah,
really get into like the details that they can apply, like exercises that they can apply.
yeah. So the thing that is what's really important, I found, is to understand that you have the power to make a change in your life, and also that you have the power to decide what kind of thoughts you will follow up on or not. And what I mean by that is that, often I can basically share some tips and strategies and ideas, but if you don't have the awareness and the understanding and the belief that you can really change your life and change your thoughts and change anything that you want, then none of the stuff will help. So my first thing is always, do you really believe that you can make a change? And if you don't, that's the first thing that I would work on. If I was starting out, I wouldn't be concerned with trying to, hack my way into happiness or focus or more productivity. I would just work on my mindset and try to adopt a positive mindset or growth mindset, or whatever people like to call it, understanding that you can definitely make a change in your life. And that's there are unfortunately no hacks or no magic
Mm.
solutions for this. It just has to come from the inside. You have to make a decision within yourself and say, I'm going to make a change, and that really needs to come from within. So that's why that's the first place that I would start.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about hacks. I I try not to get on my high horse too often, but every time I see some of that stuff online, like easy life hacks to just improve your life right away, I always feel like I guess I'm irritated about it, but it's not me personally. I just feel like it's such misleading advice because anything I've ever done in my life that's worthwhile didn't come from some hack. It came from first, like you talked about, having self-awareness to look at where I'm coming short and then just
Mm,
being honest about it. And that sucks, like it sucks to just look at yourself real honestly and see what you're not doing good, maybe even what
mm,
like you're doing poorly. And then on top of that, applying actions without shortcuts, and I
mm,
always just appreciate that in
yeah.
your message and your writing, that you never give any shortcuts. It's like, this is what it takes, this is what you have to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think sometimes I think you would probably even reach more people if you would just lie to people,
Mm,
because a lot of people like being lied at, right? And if I look at myself as well in the past, I would prefer to hear or listen to somebody who was like, "Yeah, it's a blueprint to making $1 million," and I would
yeah.
like, "Oh, no, I'm curious about that." But then I just through life and just working and business and connecting with um, people who are ahead of you. Like this is one thing that I just a very practical thing that everybody can do is look at somebody who is ahead of you a few years and in a direction that you want to move in, right? So if you want to be an investor, look at another investor, who's doing something that you want to do, right? And try to get close to those people. And you don't necessarily have to ask them to become that they become your mentor or anything, but you can just get closer to people like that. I remember years ago, my landlord was a guy who was, pretty successful in investing, and he owned like 2 dozen properties. And I was like, yeah, I like that. I like the idea. I want to get into real estate investing as well. So I just one day emailed him. I was like, hey, do you want to just catch up and talk? And I just want to, learn a couple things from you. And he's obviously older, and he has not much to prove, and he's
Mm,
retired, and he has time for that, right? So I wouldn't go to somebody who's in their prime, who's working and building all kinds of things, asking about them. But that's a very practical thing that you can do. Just get close to people who are doing something that you want to do, and that way you can just learn and see how they think. What kind of books they read, or with other kind of other people they connect, and who their friends are. That's a great way to just improve yourself as well. And what were we talking about before I got on this tangent?
no, it's all right. It's all right on track. Like we were just
Yeah.
talking about awareness and focus and not taking shortcuts and how,
Yeah, oh yeah, shortcuts,
yeah.
yeah. So and that's what I learned, right? Through just connecting with these type of people who've done it, and who like build a real career. And like on the internet, there are a lot of people who come and go, right?
Yeah.
Especially in online business. or in blogging or whatever, and you see people and they just post a couple things for a year and then they're gone. They're trying to make a few bucks with affiliate marketing or multi-level marketing, whatever. But that kind of stuff is not a career, like the people that I mentioned. I always advise people, and this is what I've done, is seek out people who built a real career over decades. And then if you talk to these type of people, you get a totally different understanding of, what it takes to
Yeah.
be successful, no matter what your definition is. And then you'll realize, well, hey, these guys never had any shortcuts. They just, went all over the place, and eventually they found their way. But it's often a matter of just plowing ahead. Like just going forward and just doing the things that are right, because nobody likes to waste their time. So that's also one of the things that I often write about and talk about, is like I always want to do something. I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time. And learning from your own mistakes is not a
Mhm.
really effective way to
Mhm.
learn. So try to learn as more. I try to learn from other people's mistakes as much as I can.
Yeah, I said the same exact thing yesterday. A new kid joined our team, and he's just really anxious to go, and he's got like his real hustle mentality on. And I'm not better than him by any means, but I have more experience with him. And I was like, look, man, like you got two choices here. You can learn the hard way by screwing it up yourself, or you can like take my word that exactly what you're doing, like I did it, and this is how it's going to end up. Like you can learn from my
Mm.
mistake instead of having to learn through yours. So I always love that advice.
Yeah, that's
um,
good.
cool, man. Well, I encourage everybody to go to your website, go to your YouTube channel, absorb a lot of the ideas that you have and a lot of the things that you teach. But I also, in my podcast, want to make sure that we give advice and insight as to what it takes to really grow a brand and how to use your ideas to build an audience and hopefully create a business out of it. Um,
Mhm.
you have so much experience with that, especially because I love people who anytime I look at growing a new brand, I always look at search. I just consider myself an SEO, and I know that mine's
Mhm.
not the only way. I just can't help it. It's a habit. It's like it's where I go to. But I'm seeing even more and more people that don't worry too much about those little tactics and those tricks, and they just say to themselves like, I want to make the best stuff I possibly can and like let
Mhm.
my ideas spread. And I really really feel that that's the approach that you've taken. So
Mhm.
um so first, like, let me just start at the beginning with this. How long ago did you start writing on your website? How long did it take for you to get some real traction, and what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so I published my first article in 2015, somewhere, you know, after the summer or so, because in that summer I decided to pursue writing as a career,
Wow.
and I first started writing a book, and I was like, some people start just writing articles and they publish their blog and then they build an audience and then
Mm-hmm.
you know they launched a book. But I was initially from the start, I was like, yeah, I just want to go to a self-publishing route.
Cool.
And I published my own book, and I thought it was a great way to start, because then you already have a product. And you know when I started blogging, I had focus, right? So I knew, okay, this is my book, and it was about overcoming fear and anxiety, and pursuing your goals and ideas and desires. So very basic self-help stuff. Um, and when I started writing, I had really focus in terms of writing the articles, and uh, you know I think after a few months or so, I had already a couple articles that got a lot of traction, mostly because at the time Medium was still was
Mm.
growing very fast, and I started publishing my articles there as well. Because, like everybody knows, if you just start publishing stuff on your own blog, how are people going to get there, right? So most people use social media, whatever, um, or they do guest posts. And I was always like, yeah, guest posting is kind of a waste of time, because from the beginning, I was like, I want to build a library of articles that people can access in 10, 20 years, right? So that's the mindset that I had from the beginning. So that made it a lot easier for me to focus on a specific channel. So for me, I focused on obviously my blog. That was always my number one priority. And then I syndicated my articles on Medium. And then later on, got some traction over there. Some publications started reaching out to me. They were like, yeah, can we publish your articles on our blog? And that helped me to just get started.
Uh, yeah, great, great advice. Obviously, I'm a fan of hosting your own content on your own website. I think
Mm-hmm.
anybody that wants to build a platform on somebody else's platform is just a terrible idea. But
Mm-hmm.
I've gone back and forth with the idea of syndicating. I started just submitting to publications. I mean, the Ascent is one that was getting published on a lot. A few of them. It really works. People do read Medium. It's got
Mm-hmm.
a ton of
Yeah.
traffic. I'm 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 rooting for Medium. Like I think it's important to give writers who aren't tech savvy a place to share their ideas. I think Substack is pretty cool as well. We were just talking about that on my last podcast. My friend Gans
Mm-hmm.
has a subscription based newsletter about European tech, and we were talking about the difference between Substack and Medium and how that's all working.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but the question, I don't know where I was going with that. The question
Yeah.
was there's I have found kind of two methodologies there. There's build an audience and then kind of figure out what they want and create that
Mm-hmm.
product, or it's create a product and then find the people who you think would be interested in that product. I've been sort of a Brian Clark protege. He's the founder of Copyblogger, and I'm involved in that company, and he's
Oh,
been
okay. Yeah.
into just the idea of building an audience, observe your audience, pay attention to what they're interested in, and then build products around them. But
Mm-hmm.
recently, we were talking to Nathan Barry, who's the founder of ConvertKit, and he said he prefers it the other way. He says, like, no, I want to build a product that I want to build, and then find people that are in that tribe, and
Mm-hmm.
reach out to them
Yeah.
specifically. And it
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
that was the route that you took.
Yeah, definitely. But this is interesting, right? So because right now I'm working on a course about starting a digital business and selling digital products. And the reason that I am working on this course is because my readers basically asked for that. And when I started, I have to be honest, I didn't think that I would create a course about creating digital products, because I was like, I'm just going to create digital products. I don't see any honor in just teaching it, right? But now, obviously, 5 years in, people are like, hey, how did you do it? Now, what a lot of successful bloggers and entrepreneurs and online digital entrepreneurs have, and it sounds like your friend Brian. I know copy bloggers. I've read a couple articles on it. It's good stuff. Um, and I had this as well. Is the curse of knowledge.
Yeah,
Looking back, you can't imagine anymore how you got started,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
When I started this process, so I've been now testing my product with like I talked to almost 30 people on my students and my readers, and I was like, yeah, you need to build an audience and then ask your audience what they want. And they were like, yeah, that's great advice, but
Mhm.
how can I build an audience? Like, what am I going to write about? About dogs, about business, about tech, right? So just getting all this input, I was like, yeah, this is really great advice to build an audience for an established digital person or business or whatever, right?
Mm.
Creator. But if you are just getting started, in 100% of the cases, I would start with a product, because that will give you focus, and that will, like, what I talked about, that will give you a sense of direction when you start creating content. Because the last thing that you want is to spend a year or 2 years building an audience, and then figuring out, hey, oh, I can't do anything with this audience,
Mm.
right? So that's the biggest pitfall, I think, when you start creating, just start building an audience um, without purpose.
Yeah, without purpose, I think is exactly the the point to make there, because when you start with a product, you have a focus, you know what it is you're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish, as opposed to just like, I want to get in front of as many people as possible. A quick little side story. I love how you talk about the curse of knowledge. I'm an executive at a company in Tennessee, and um, we're starting to build out some of our media platforms. And this kid who wants to head the podcast, it was cracking me up, because I was putting together this whole outline of like how we can reach out to some of these other healthcare execs and figure out how to get in the door and get past all the gatekeepers. And he just had no idea how much of a process that whole outreach thing is. And so it's like, oh, okay, like I'll just find some people to bring on my podcast. And then we had a meeting today, and he had 3 like high level execs of other healthcare industries that we're related to booked on the show. And I'm thinking like, how did you do that? And he was like, I just called them and asked them if they wanted to come on. It's like such a perfect example of how sometimes we get in our own way because we think we know better,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the thing is that also we have, like you said, there's this good example of having a distorted view
Mm.
of the past. So this is a good example as well. Like some people who've worked in sales jobs, or who did a lot of cold calling. They're like basically scarred for life, because they're like, yeah, I never want to do that again. But that's not a good way to look at the world, because maybe you used a very different approach in the past, or maybe you called into a specific group that was, not a right fit. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the method is bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm not a fan of cold calling, but just an example, right? So like if you do something and it gives you bad results, doesn't mean that the thing is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. So let's come out the tail end of this thing with what it sounds like you just had a very similar experience with your own audience, which is product development. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of people feel comfortable with creating podcasts, creating videos, writing. I mean, I think it's still very, very difficult to be vulnerable and put yourself out there with that kind of content.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
really, really find the bottleneck comes to where, like, how do I create some kind of product for people?
Mhm.
I think courses is always a great place to start, because it's so, it can be about anything. I think when people think of courses, they think it's like, I don't want to create a course about creating a course, right? But it doesn't have to be the
Mhm.
case. I mean, I've bought courses
Yeah.
on history, and I've bought courses on science stuff. I'm kind of into physics. Like whatever you're
Mhm.
into, there's other people that are into it, and you can
Yeah.
create
Yeah.
products around that. But
Yeah. Definitely.
what I want to know is, what's your process with it? Because I've never gotten into digital products. I've gotten into lead gen services mostly. That's like how our companies have succeeded. And I'm
Mhm.
always curious as to, where do you start? I look at the idea of building a digital product, and it seems so big and so overwhelming. And I know that other
Yeah.
people feel the same way.
Yeah. So here's a piece of advice that I'm incorporating in my course, but I'm happy to give it away for free.
Please.
But so people tend to overcomplicate this process.
Mm.
And if you read online business books, or like books about, starting a course, or, all these type of things, they talk about, creating a customer avatar, and finding your unique niche,
Mm.
right? Like, have you heard of that stuff?
Oh, of course, all the time.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? All of that is useless. All you need to do is figure out what people are already paying for, right? So if you're in the digital space, we're not trying to be Elon Musk here, right? We're not trying to do something that is totally unique, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. We would be building something that the world had never seen. We have to be really honest about it, right? Like we're trying to improve. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make things better. And I think that's already a very honorable thing to do. Not everybody's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Now, all you need to do is go on a marketplace and figure out what people are already paying for. And if that's something that you are really good at, or if you think that you can provide value for in that specific market or product, now all you need to do is make it 10 times better,
Mm.
right? And then you just go in and sell to the same audience. And now you get started. And then later on, if you want, you can do some crazy stuff and innovate and all that. But my this is my view. Like, I started my first business in 2010 with my father when I just got out of graduate school, and our whole thing was just in the beginning, just get some cash flow, right? Just start building up the business and have we did it without debt, or at least we had some short-term debt, but we paid it off quite fast. But it's all about obviously this type of doing business. What I'm talking about is like bootstrapping, So um, if you do that, then you just start slowly building things up. But you have to be patient, right? So there's always a struggle going on. Like if you really want to go fast and you want to go to Silicon Valley route, the stuff that I'm talking about is not that relevant.
Mm.
But if you want to build a long-term business and you want to do it particularly uh, on your own, or maybe with a partner or a friend or a spouse or whatever, it's a good way to go, in my opinion, just to figure out what people are already paying for, and if that's something that you can do better, then you have a good shot at being successful.
Yeah, brilliant. No need to overcomplicate it. And I also love how you
Hmm.
talked about, at least with your father, like the importance of getting it and then getting it out there and selling it,
Hmm.
right? I really
Yeah.
really find, at least what I've seen with people that I've mentored or even some coaching services that I do, I think it's very easy to fall into the idea of like, I'm getting somewhere because I published another article or I sent out another tweet or whatever, but
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
it's crazy where in online business, I think sometimes people lose the business part of it. Like you can't do
Yeah.
it forever. You got to start selling stuff and you got to make some money.
Exactly.
I really don't
Yeah.
think that gets talked about enough.
No, that's really important, and for me, it's all about creating value and creating things that are useful to people. So that's when I create a product, whether it's a book or course or coaching program, or maybe even an app, and I'm thinking about doing an app as well.
Cool.
And all that I'm thinking about is how useful is this for the person who will use this. Um, and that's my only concern. Um, because if it's not useful to somebody, to me, it's not a real business. Then it's just a way to make a few bucks, and that's not a career.
Yeah. And okay, so let me wrap up with this idea because even listening to you talk, I'm trying to observe myself and the things that I struggle with this. You talked about being patient and
Mm-hmm.
the the duality between having urgency in your business so that you get somewhere, but having the patience so that you don't waste time and you don't present things before they're finished, right? You have like a very cool demeanor about you. I'm pretty high strung, like I always want things done faster than they are. And it's something
Mm-hmm.
that I struggle with, like for real. So
Yeah.
what is like how do you navigate that where you continuously make progress? You're not going too slow. You're not going too
Mm,
fast. You do things when they're done and you do things when they're ready. Like, do you have daily
mm.
meditations that you do? You seem to have that down.
Yeah. So do you mean more in terms of how I schedule like product launches, or do you mean like
No, I mean with
just in
the
terms of?
anxiety of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like how do you cope
Yeah.
with just that nervousness of, is this good
Yeah.
enough? Is this ready? Should I do it now?
Yeah.
Should I do it later?
Yeah. 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 So one of my main rules um, for work, and I've been applying this for now. I can't remember when I learned this. It was in college, but or in high school. Um, I think it was in college. So one of my professors was like, when I had to hand in a report, and I was like, yeah, today or tomorrow is the deadline, and can you extend it for me? And he was like, yeah, I can extend it for you, but only if you can promise me you'll do a better job. Right? And I was like, well, will I do a better job? And my honest answer was no, because I would write the same paper today or tomorrow. It doesn't matter, right? It wouldn't be better. And what I mean by this is, so let's say I'm working on a course and I'm like, okay, I'm making progress and I'm at the stage that I can launch it, but you're anxious, like, oh, what will people think, or like all these things. Just ask yourself, will it be better in a week or in a month, or is it good right now, right? And if your answer is it will be better in a month, then I would just give myself a little bit more time. But if your answer is it's good, right, and it will be the same thing as in a week, because the only thing that I'll probably do is just run around in circles and make myself crazy.
Mhm.
I won't add a new module, or I won't add a whole new feature to this app, or I won't add a couple of new chapters to this book, right? Then you're good to go. And at some point, you just have to accept that. And this is where stoicism really comes into place, and also pragmatism. And I see myself more as a pragmatist than anything else, right? Like I've read a lot about stoicism, all kinds of other philosophies, Eastern philosophy. I like that as well. I do meditate sometimes, but I'm mostly a pragmatist. And a pragmatist, the pragmatism movement was started by William James in the 19th century in the US. And the pragmatists basically look at what works. So I'm always concerned with what works. And if something, and this is something that is quite difficult to get your head around at first, but um, when you worry and when get anxious, or when you're not calm, you're doing something that's useless, right? You're going
Yeah.
against yourself. So, like, take a helicopter view. You just put yourself outside of yourself, and look at the situation, and look at your behavior and see, okay, what am I doing that's working, and what am I doing that's not working for me? You have to be totally selfish. So, okay, is this behavior helping me or hurting me? Stop the things that are hurting you and do more what's helping you.
Mm.
And it's okay to be selfish. If everybody's selfish and everybody is improving themselves, you don't have to help out each other that much, right? So that's good. That's how I look at these things.
That was so insightful from your professor, and it's so simple, like,
Yeah,
do you need more time because you need to make it better? No, I
yeah,
just need more time. It's like, okay, well then no.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
what a great honest way to answer
yeah,
that. Like, am I asking for myself because, basically, because of fear, right? Are you trying
yeah,
to delay the inevitable because your fear is telling you that it's not ready? Or
yeah,
are you actually trying to make it better? And if so, take more time. If not,
yeah.
publish it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole philosophy. If you apply that, I think you'll be able to publish or ship or build or whatever, without harming or without just getting in your own way.
Yeah, there it is
Yeah,
right there. Uh, Man, beautiful. Well, Darius, like I said, I'm such a fan of your work. I really, really appreciate you taking the time, especially in this ridiculous world we live in right now, and just feeling
yeah,
really
appreciate
grateful
it,
that
man.
you're in the Netherlands and I'm in the States and we can interact like this. It's such a cool experience that we have. I'm gonna leave all the links to your website and your YouTube channel and all that in the show notes. But please, while people are listening, if they don't have access to my blog, where can they find you?
Yeah, so best way to connect is on my website, dariusforoux.com, and not really active on social media, but
You're not
yeah.
missing anything, brother. It's all rage right now. I had to cut myself off because I was just like, I'm not even having fun anymore. I'm just angry, and I don't even know why I'm angry.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, because you see just one specific part of the population, and
Yeah,
so not the greatest part often,
yeah, for sure. All right,
for
man.
sure.
Well, thanks again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch. We'll do this again.
Yeah, sounds good. I really enjoyed talking to you as well.
All right, bro. See ya.